Fired up tonight, and why wouldn't we be? Senator Holly Hughes is here, along with the future Senator for Services to Talking Points, our dear friend Joe Hildebrand, former Senator, former Speaker, and the wonderful Bronwyn Bishop is here. Kevin Donnelly, I mentioned before, I had a chance to have a talk to about these NAPLAN results, which honestly, I just think tomorrow, phone hookup, National Cabinet, get an education summit happening as soon as possible and bring in some overseas experts. Because as I said, when it was the New South Wales Police Force and it stunk to high heaven, you went and found somebody from overseas to bring it in reform. Someone from the outside, not just talking to the same people on the inside over and over again, which I have a fear we're about to do. But Kevin agrees with me. This is a disgrace that a third of kids are falling behind in NAPLAN.
We've known about this for 19 years, and governments, bureaucrats, academics, teacher, training institutions have done nothing to turn it around. So it's really allowed generations of young children, especially boys, to leave school, primary and secondary, illiterate, innumerate. And it's a national disgrace, but I can't see things improving anytime soon.
Such a good point. As boys' education has been going backwards, the overall performance has as well, but we're not allowed to say there's a problem with boys' education in Australia, which has been the case now for the best part of, 30 years? Who does he think is at fault for all of this?
I often use the expression, Dracula's in charge of the blood bank. And it's no good using the same people who got you into the problem to expect that they're going to solve it. So it's a closed shop education in Australia. The British Conservative politician Michael Gove called it the Blob, that science fiction film. It's a blob of like-minded people who were really caught up in their own beliefs, and they won't allow anyone else to question it.
So what's his solution? Some concrete ideas for how we can change this?
There's no magic bullet, as the Americans would say, no single bullet. But as I say, when I looked at the benchmarking projects, there are 3 or 4 things straight away that stand out. The first thing is to get classrooms that are disciplined, where the teachers are authority figures rather than facilitators and guides by the side, all this new age jargon they use now. We need to have a rigorous curriculum based on what actually works in the classroom in terms of effective teaching and learning. Parents must read to their children, give them picture books, teach kids to respect authority, and we need to better resource teachers because at the moment they're drowning in red tape and bureaucracy.
All right, guys, that's the expert's view. Let us all opine now here. I'm going to spend some time on this tonight, and I know a lot of other shows have. My apologies if you've heard the same thing 17 times. But, Holly, this is serious. It's been serious for a long time, and the fact that it doesn't lead the news, and the fact that it's sort of, it's only if you've got kids in this is the future of the country, right? Yeah. And we spend so much time hand-wringing and carrying on about the future of the country when it comes to climate change, colonisation, all the rest of it. What about reading and writing? What about the absolute basics? Because everyone involved in the decision-making has been making the wrong decisions for a long time.
Yeah, and look, there's so many factors, I think, that play in this. I mean, discipline in the classroom has just gone. And I mean, we were just talking about it downstairs. You know, I remember a blackboard duster being pegged across the room if you were talking too much in class. There were teachers that you knew that, you know, you had to behave a certain way, and I think a lot of that discipline's gone out the door.
I agree.
You've also got a situation where we know a lot of kids learn differently, particularly boys tend to be more visual learners. They're quite tactile. But there's no 2 ways of teaching. So they're all taught in exactly the same way. But I think the thing for parents, and they might not even understand when you read these NAPLANs, where your child is marked on the little dots that you see where your kid is, and when they do it in years 3, 5, 7 and 9, you can actually see where they're supposed to have gone up. And quite often, and I've had, a mum, I remember saying to me a few years ago, her son had not gone up in the 2 years. And she's like, that's it. I got to get a new school. This isn't happening. There's nothing going on here. And so that's why NAPLAN should be a useful tool in that you can see where the kids are, where they need support, and put that in place. It seems like we do the test and go, well, whatever. Also, there's nothing there to support them.
Yeah, I was having a look at the NAPLAN for my beautiful girl Asher today, and I won't tell you the exacts, but she's doing okay, all right? It's all her mum, not me. To work out what the school average is, the state average and the national average in and of itself sort of requires a degree to go and work around. So we're watching their performance all the way through. Joe, I'll get to you in a second, but Bronwyn, again, the urgency with which we have to deal with this, right? Now again, I say this as the person who is, in terms of book smarts, as smart as the brick in the man cave, right? But I've been able to use other smarts to get me to where I am here today, all right? But I don't mean to be rude or arrogant. I'm the exception of the rule. Reality is most people who end up losing touch with education will have a much tougher life than the one that I'm lucky enough to live. But let's be serious here. If the Prime Minister or the Premiers don't call some sort of urgent response to this, we're going to get exactly the same response to these things, which means nothing changes.
Look, we need a much bigger change. Last night you talked about the need for nationalism, to be proud of our nation. Well, being proud of your nation and the ability to reach your maximum potential are linked. And if you've got teachers who are teaching kids that they've got to be ashamed of their country, that they've really got to grovel and say, our forefathers did wrong, our country's illegitimate, and by the way, you're all going to die in an inferno because of climate change.
Correct.
What's the point in striving to achieve and have new thoughts and to be hopeful and to try and work towards being a contributor to developing a better country? It's being killed off. You've got teachers who are teaching this misery and you've got kids who are receiving it. So until we start to say that this is a great country and you can make a contribution to making it even better, and these are the tools that you'll need to do it, and we're here to help you get to those maximising your potential, well, we're not going to get anywhere. One of the worst things we ever did was to establish a national curriculum, and I tried hard not to see it happen. But at least when we had 8 jurisdictions, somebody might have got it right. But now it's all dumbing down all the way, and it was so predictable as to what would happen. It's put the control in a smaller and smaller group of people, and what they're wanting to do and what they're teaching into our schools is downgrading their ability to achieve. And until we stop it, it's not going to change.
Well, Joe, we see an example here where federal government and every state government, with one example, are on the same side of politics as the teachers' unions, right? The ability for everyone to be pulled together and start pushing in one direction, the moment is now.
Well, a couple of things, and you'll be very pleased to hear a lot of this. A lot of what you're talking about is already happening. And you talk about getting people from outside the sphere. They've commissioned Mark Scott, and I believe he was actually commissioned by your government, Bronwyn, and then it was extended by the incoming Albanese government, but with a more powerful turbocharged role. He's done a complete overhaul, not just of how teachers teach, but how we teach our teachers. So how we attract them to the teaching degrees, what we teach them in those teaching degrees, how we then teach them in the classroom, and then how they teach the kids. And it is a lot of what you're talking about. It is saying goodbye to that stupid exploratory learning, student-led kind of stuff that all the hippies thought would just, kids would just teach themselves to read if they were just exposed to books. It is talking about direct, focused, explicit instruction, talking about breaking down words instead of just whole word learning or whole sentence.
So is this a series of things that are the general principles, or this is what he wants to do and this is where we're
this is what he has done. There is evidence that this worked. I spoke to Mark Scott just today. I spoke to the minister as well. They're on the same page. They love each other. I love both of them. It's a beautiful love-in. So this is a very, very clear-eyed response. And he also said very clearly as well, and one of the last things I did before I filed the story this afternoon was take what he said, what I had at the bottom, and think, actually, this needs to go at the top. Because he said, we have to stop criticising NAPLAN, we have to stop complaining about NAPLAN, and we all know who complains about NAPLAN. It's the Teachers Federation, which is not affiliated to the Labor Party, by the way. And he said, we have to accept that this is a terrible result. We have to accept that NAPLAN is not a test that we're supposed to ace. It is a test that is meant to expose shortcomings and failings so that we can fix them. That's why it was designed. And we have to cop that, and we have to use these old-fashioned, if you like, or traditional teaching styles that we know work. And that is just one thing that they're doing.
Not to knock the wind out of your sails, but obviously for some people, Mark Scott, that name may ring a bell. Yes, he used to run the ABC. And then he ran the New South Wales Education Department, and that's where he is right now. Bronwyn, you get the last say.
Can I just say, while we're at it, Teaching standards have declined since we closed down teachers' colleges, which were designed specifically to let people who wanted to be teachers learn about the business of teaching. And now they've been put into the ordinary university system with all sorts of strange degrees and then churned out and said, go be a teacher. So how about we look at re-establishing teachers' colleges where we're actually teaching teachers how to teach and how to convey knowledge. And yes, Joe, talking about phonetics, it does work.
It does. Oh, and stronger classroom management, that's another thing.
Well, absolutely.
But it doesn't cost any money.
That's
That's the thing, it doesn't cost any money.
No.
Exactly
And kids should go into a classroom and think they've got to behave, that they can't just run riot over the teacher. But unfortunately, there's nothing the teachers can do, and they're not necessarily getting the parental support at home.
But the thing
and
is,
so it's just,
And
but I
it's
mean,
the
just coming
involvement
back
of
to the
parents.
teachers.
Right? Because I'm saying that I think that one of the problems here is that Gen X, my generation, right, our generation, has focused too much on extracurricular activities that you got to fill the week with, and not enough on curricular activities.
You know, every afternoon's got an activity.
It's great that little Bethany can dance, but can she spell?
No, but the thing is as well, if you've got the teachers, people that are going into teaching degrees, sometimes it's because they failed their HSC or whatever state you're in.
And I'm finding they pay more money.
The lowest ATAR required.
Make it
you
easier
seem
for
to be
people who are
agreeing with
already
me.
professionals. Yeah,
We always agree with you, Bronwyn. Come on, you know.
They won't go back to teaching colleges,
No,
but it will
that's
make
why
it
you're
easier
right,
for people
Bronwyn.
who are already in other professions to transfer over to teaching, possibly even paying them while they do their degree so they can still keep paying off the house. And also the other really important thing is there are schools that are doing incredible. The reason we have all this data and we know what works is because there are schools, public schools, including schools in Western Sydney, disadvantaged areas, that are doing it and getting outstanding results. And I've seen it firsthand up close.
Well,
The problem
Jihad
is
Dib and what
they're
he was
not
able to do, yeah.
Punch Bowl, Granville Boys High, both awesome places. But the problem is that it's not being rolled out everywhere, and you don't necessarily have teaching staff or leaders of that calibre everywhere. So what you need to do is you need to mint that, you need to bottle it, and you need to roll it out everywhere. And that is another one of the things. The Daily Telegraph Best in Class campaign that we did early in the year.
God love you.
Doing.
All right, class dismissed. Can everyone please put an apple on Bronwyn's table? All right, that's the way it's got to go. Thank you very much, Stu. Appreciate it. We'll get into a free-flowing discussion next week on other things.